It has been a very interesting first quarter of the year so far from a healthcare staffing perspective. On this episode, we talk about the state of the industry, and we get some inside information from a recruiter who was actually a travel nurse before, Brad McDonald.
Thanks for having me here, Rich.
Atlas All Access starts now. All right. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
You've done this with me a few times.
Yeah.
I want to get your perspective because it's not easy out there right now.
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, it's not easy for healthcare professionals. It's not easy for recruiters. And I mean, no one cries for agency owners, right? But
naturally,
it's not easy for us either, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about this a little bit. But first, reintroduce yourself. Kind of give us a background. Who you are, where you came from, what you did before this, and then what you're doing right now.
Awesome. So my name's Brad McDonald. I'm now a recruiter with Atlas MedStaff. I did travel in the ER with Atlas MedStaff the whole time for 4.5 years, where I pretty much went coast to coast. Went on my first meet and greet, happened to be in Phoenix, where I was on assignment, and started talking to you guys about this position, and, well, that's why I'm here now.
Who was the first Atlas employee you met while you were on that meet and greet?
Probably Stapp, because he was my recruiter. So I think that was the first time we met in person.
Awesome. Awesome. And Phoenix is we do a lot every year in Phoenix at that one meet and greet. So
it's wild. If anyone has a chance to go, my parents were actually in town for it.
Yeah.
It was over St. Patty's.
Didn't you bring your parents too?
Oh yeah, my parents went to all the events and
awesome.
Everything. Oh, they had a great time.
I love it. Well, I mean, mark it on your calendar. We're going to do it again next year.
Oh,
right?
yeah, 100%. If you guys get the chance to go.
Next question from the recruiter seat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you've done both, right? And you've been through some maybe leaner times as a as a travel nurse too, or whatever. Give me a sense of kind of where we are right now, because I can generalize all day. Give me a sense of what it's like on the phones right now.
Sure. I think the most comparable time for me, if I'm going to go back to my traveling days, was right at the beginning of COVID. The rates hadn't really spiked for anyone, except for maybe some ICU in some places where, like in New York and whatnot. But as an ER nurse, all the jobs had completely dried up. And so at the beginning of COVID, I was without work for about 2 months. Because everyone was too scared, to go in the hospitals or anything. So ERs were completely dead.
Yep.
And the rates were about what we're kind of seeing now. So it's almost exactly comparison. It takes a long time to get a job. You're competing against a ton of people.
Yeah.
But I think the big difference now is we had a lot of travelers jump into this pool because of COVID and the rates being so good and whatnot.
Yep.
So now we have basically, I'd probably say a little less jobs than that. It's definitely down, but what adds to it all is the amount of travelers we have versus the amount of jobs we have.
Sure.
I think this has been the worst ratio of that I can remember from travel days to now recruiting.
And I can only imagine the pressure that puts on every single one of those jobs that opens up, right? I mean, especially in highly desirable areas with a highly desirable bill rate, right? That's instead of 20 candidates, maybe you're seeing 80 candidates for
200.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the stories out there, right? And
yeah.
you hear that. I talk to other agencies, and they say the exact same thing. Like, we submitted 2 candidates to a job that had 200 submittals.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we probably submitted 2 candidates to that as well. That's another thing that we're seeing right now that I think is interesting is there are hospitals, and not only hospitals, but MSP and VMS providers that are limiting the number of submittals that each individual agency can send because they know they're just going to get flooded.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't remember anyone throttling that back like that.
Yeah, in my experience is relatively new to the recruiting side of things, but I've never seen it like this because jobs we normally have are not in our pipeline at the moment because, like you said, the restrictive nature of what they're doing with how many each agency gets, and the second you get in there, you got to stay on top of it. Everything's it's there, then it's gone.
Yep. Almost instantaneous.
Yeah. I mean, perfect example. Yesterday, I submitted to 4 jobs within an hour of them being posted. I only got into 2 of them.
Man.
Yeah.
Wow. And I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm just not surprised.
Yeah.
So from an ownership seat, the next question that I'll answer from this side.
Yeah.
What's it look like from this side? I can tell you right now, after doing this for 11 years at Atlas, almost 19 years total right now. I mean, I've seen the ups and downs. I lived through 08, 09. I was, the agency I worked for then had at the beginning of 08 when the market crashed, we had 40 open jobs. And 20 of them were mine in Kansas City and St. Louis, and those bill rates stunk.
Oh, I bet.
Like they were not great at all.
Yeah.
But it was what we had to live on, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've seen it bad. I've seen it really good, obviously.
Yeah.
The perspective right now, at least from our side, is this is a regular cycle. It's just way more exaggerated.
Yeah.
And maybe exaggerated is the wrong word. It's just we're feeling it a lot more.
Yeah.
The highs were really high. Now the lows are really low. And you take this and you put it on a graph next to 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, like, good years in the industry. And it does the exact same thing during the months. It's just obviously way up here and way down here. So I believe in a regular cycle, we're going to come out of this. And probably, I said this month hasn't really turned out that way.
Yeah.
Probably next month.
Well, here's the deal. It's not like there's 10 million new nurses that showed up in the country all of a sudden.
Exactly.
And so they're still short on jobs. This is on the hospital side, what they're deciding what they want to do with their budgets and whatnot. Because I know people I talk to, nurses, we tried to extend some places are like, oh, low census. And they're like, well, I'm in the ER and there's 45 people in the waiting room and it's a 6-7 hour wait because we don't have enough nurses. So I don't know where this low census thing comes from. So it's a matter of them kind of controlling their budget and we're just kind of taking the brunt of it, us and the travel nurses.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you see, okay, how much money a hospital spent last year, and then they're doing their annual reviews and they look at what they spent first quarter of this year and like, whoa, pump the brakes, right? It reminds me a lot of, I used to watch House.
Oh, yeah.
And
love that show.
It reminds me of when he was filling it, he was in the ER and he came out to the waiting room and he's like, I got $20, anybody that'll leave right now. Like for anybody that's just there because I have a headache or whatever, that type of thing. And that's, I don't want to say that's happening, but it certainly feels like that. I mean, it feels like, you're right, low census. Is it really low census?
We didn't gain that many nurses, and there's no way because you also have to factor in how many nurses left bedside post-COVID. I have tons of nursing friends that they're now looking for non-bedside jobs. Yeah. So I'm like, I don't think there's a problem as far as we have too many nurses.
Right. No. No.
I don't think that'll be a problem for a long time.
I think the pandemic made that a heck of a lot worse.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So it moves into the next question. And I know you cross over. You don't necessarily cross over. You don't do a lot of allied recruiting.
Sure.
And it's something that's fairly newer to us, but that seems very strong right now. Do you have any sense why or where that strength might be coming from on the allied side? I mean, I have some really good guesses.
If I were to just guess, obviously I don't know, but if I were to guess, it's something similar to like the fact that a lot of the allied positions don't have like assigned patients,
Sure.
They take care of a whole floor. So maybe the hospitals are able to justify paying for that person because let's say you're an RT, you got the whole ER.
Yep.
So they can justify that one person treating all these people.
Sure.
And when we get into like certain RN positions, you're only watching 2 people.
Yep.
So they're like, well, this guy takes care of 20. Now it's not apple to oranges.
Yeah. We'll adjust ratios.
Or it's apples and oranges. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll adjust ratios in order to make the fit whatever, whatever we're trying to do.
Yeah.
The hospital, whoever.
So that would be my biggest guess is just because they have to, they're not typically assigned to a floor like a CT tech or, rad tech or anything like the RT, whatever.
Yep.
So they go all over the place. So I would see that being maybe one of the reasons why there's a pickup and they haven't been hurt maybe as bad as the RNs.
I think you're probably right. In a lot of ways, too, like, we didn't get any healthier through the pandemic, right? I mean...
I didn't.
No, I didn't either. And I think some of those are still... They're still taking patients that they would have normally seen during those times.
Yeah.
Right? And sadly, in some of those cases, imaging and that type of thing, the patient might be sicker or worse off because because they didn't go in when they probably should have, or they couldn't, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they couldn't. So I think that's probably one of the reasons why Allied has stayed
I could see
fairly
that.
strong.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. give me an idea of pay ranges right now. Like where are we sitting now versus maybe like a year ago or 6 months ago?
It's really weird because so we're kind of at the time like 6 months ago, you're looking average bill rate or weekly gross for a nurse maybe just below 3K.
Sure.
On average. And now if you come close to that, you're doing pretty good. So the average now, I would say, is closer to 2,000, but then there's still a lot of those outliers of the 3,000. I shouldn't say a lot. There's still some of those. So it's a weird dichotomy right now. You have, boom, these big bill rates, and then the average. So it's like there's, there's a lot of good ones out there on the top, but more on average, we're looking 2K-ish.
I can tell you still from what we are tracking and how we track it here, and going back to maybe average bill rates from and average pay rates from like 2019, 2018, we're still 20% higher, 25% higher in a lot of places.
Yeah, so we're down from COVID rates, obviously. But I remember before I had any COVID pay as a traveler, the highest weekly gross I had was $1,750, and that was doing it for 3 years.
And $1,750 would get you laughed off the phone at this point, right? I mean,
sometimes,
but it's kind of what it is, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it really is what it is.
Yeah, and it's tough, and I understand why nurses are having some trouble because I definitely saw the increase in housing prices just while I was traveling.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I paid $3,000 a month one time in Phoenix. For an apartment because that's all I could get.
Because that's all you could get.
Yeah. And so I see why they're like, okay, well, we can't go down to like I did an assignment for like 15 something a week in Connecticut at one point in time.
Yeah,
you couldn't do that.
No,
you can't do that. Now the housing prices were a lot then.
It wouldn't make any sense.
No, it would not make any sense.
Once you duplicate expenses and or whatever, it's not going to make any sense.
No, 100%.
No. Okay, crystal ball time. Let's.
Sure.
Where do you think we end up in the summer? I don't want to look at the whole year because it's really hard to tell.
Oh yeah.
Where do you think summer kind of shakes out?
Well, it kind of to go off what I was talking about earlier, they can only restrict the number of jobs at these hospitals for so long.
Right.
You're either going to get people quit or you're going to have more people go try and travel or something like that. So I'd have to imagine the hospitals are going to start releasing more jobs. Maybe just our average isn't what it was. I don't think we're ever going to go back where $1,750 a week is the best I could get as an ER nurse ever.
No.
I still think over $2,000 is very reasonable for most specialties. And so I think we're just going to come to a new norm that's 20-30% pre-COVID, higher than pre-COVID.
Yep.
That would be my estimation. And the jobs, they can't get any less right now.
Right.
Realistically, this is the lowest amount of jobs we've had since I've been in here total.
Yeah.
So it can't get any worse on that end. So I would have to think a gradual uptake in jobs and more leveling out of the pay rates.
Yep. It's hard. It makes me, my wife is a big believer in jinx. I think you may have just jinxed us a little bit by saying it can't get any worse.
I don't believe in jinxes.
Okay, truthfully, I don't either. But but saying stuff out loud like that, that's tough, right? Because at one point during the beginning of the year, I said, okay, we're going to be like this for a while. Like it's going to stay, and the pay rates are going to stay, or whatever. And then we just started seeing a slow decline, and that's kind of where we've been sitting. So, all right. One piece of advice, if you were still a traveler, you would want to hear from your recruiter during this time. Like, what's one piece of advice that you think that you would need that you could then, or that you now as a recruiter could give to your travelers?
Number one thing. All right, so I got into travel nursing to travel. I wanted to go see the country. Sure, I did get, it was an increase in pay. I mean, we're talking like a $30,000 pay raise from when, in the back then, even, from my staff job. And I would say what you need to do is focus on pay versus cost of living ratio. Don't be afraid. This time of the year, a lot of people like to be on the coast. This time of the year, it's really nice in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Great time to come here. Your cost of living's lower. And so what you do, if you're looking at an area, your recruiter's pitching you a job, go look up housing immediately first. And then you're like, oh, well, it's only like $900 a month for rent here. Like, I can take a contract that's a little bit lower. Because let's say you're making $3,000 a week, but your rent is $4,000. like that doesn't make any sense.
You're upside down instantly.
Yeah, you're upside down. My philosophy was I always wanted to make weekly gross every week to be more than my rent. So,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
you figure you have 3 weeks for all the rest of your bills.
Yep.
And so that generally is a good number to keep you ahead. I'd like to be like 60-75% of my weekly gross, but like with the rates going down and housing going up, that makes it a little more difficult.
Yep.
So I would say don't just focus on, because every location isn't the same.
Right.
Don't just focus on what the weekly gross is. Look at the cost of living in the place you're looking to go.
Is that okay? Put yourself back in the traveler shoes. Is that something that you would do? You would ask your recruiter to do with you then? Like, let's go look at the housing prices there. Or what? No, that's not going to work. But maybe there's something lower somewhere, or something more affordable somewhere.
Yeah, I love talking because, I did it for a while. I love talking to my nurses about, like, do you need help looking for housing? What's holding you back from here? Is it the housing? Well, let's look together, because I got a few tricks of the trade that I used to use over the time. I used many different avenues. Actually, the most common one is furnished finders for travel nurses. I never used that, actually. I used a bunch of different other random ones, and so I love helping them out and looking for stuff. There's a few things you don't realize, like you can sign a long-term lease and just pay the penalty for cutting it shorter, but you actually save yourself a lot more money in the long run, because if you signed a short one to begin with, it was twice the rent.
They're going to jam all that into 3 months versus 6 months or whatever. So.
And then sometimes you only have to pay an extra month's rent to cancel early. I did that on multiple assignments. Yeah. Signed a 15-month lease, even though I knew I was only going to be there for it ended up being 9 months, but it worked out financially for me because of it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, I hope that helped. I mean, I hope that kind of. I mean, it's not an easy time, like I said,
it's not.
And I hope that helps a little bit as you're out there doing this every single day, looking for that next contract. My piece of advice would be extend.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, stay where you're at if you can. Right. I know a lot of places maybe aren't extending. Ask for that extension. Ask to stay.
100% on that. I will double down on what you said. If you've got a place where you like to live right now, ask them if you can stay, because you'd rather be where you're at. You know what you got. What's the saying is the devil you know
versus the devil you don't.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's bearable, you think this is not so bad.
Yeah.
Stay.
Wait it out. Wait it out and see what happens. Because I can tell you, like I said, there's a cycle to this.
100%.
And I really believe that we should be coming out here at some point.
Yeah.
Summer is going to look considerably different. So let's do this again in 6 months. Come in here with me in 6 months and
let's reevaluate.
Yeah, and see where we're at. So,
I like it.
All right, Brad. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me, Rich.
All right. We'll see you next week.